Okay, so thank you, Oded. I'm actually teaching at the Design Academy, but I'm not from there. I have my own studio called Design Related. I'm dealing a lot with product design and a lot of research. I'm also very interested in digital culture and the way its constantly changing environment can affect my field, which is product design. So today I'm going to try and share with you a project that I've done a few years back, and it deals with with interior, with products, but it also deals with online video. And the story starts a while back when I was living somewhere else in the Netherlands. And while most of my friends and family never visited me in my apartment in the Netherlands, almost all of them have been regular guests in my living room. Well, not all of my living room, but they all knew very well this ugly painting and this piece of worn-out IKEA couch. And they knew it because it was my Skype background. That is what we used to communicate with people like us. And was so well known by all of these people that it was even our Happy New Year's card that year that we shared, and that was enough to know that this is us. Now, I'm saying this because video has introduced a new tool of communication. I mean, you know better than I that the internet has introduced a lot of new tools of communication, but I think video is very interesting, and I'll soon share why. But I want you to keep in mind this notion of the background, this idea that while our face is usually facing the camera, our background is also introduced into the camera. So what do we use video for? We use it to connect with loved ones that are away from our bedrooms or apartments. We use it for work. You know, you probably do a lot of international conferencing, and then people talk to you from airports, from lobbies, from their apartments, from their offices. I do teach in Bezalel, and we don't have any budget, so when we get lecturers from abroad, they usually also do it through Skype from their apartments or wherever. We use it to meet new people, not always successfully, if you talk about chat roulette. And it's even the place for new businesses, new from-home businesses to start. It could be from that type of industry, but it's also from online psychology, from how-to courses, online, etc. So it's even a groundwork for new types of businesses. But while this is kind of live communication, what I find very interesting is actually the thing we don't think about as a dialogue, which is the kind of one-way street of communication, YouTube, etc. And I find it interesting in this example, for example, with video blogging, which is our ability to become journalists, for example, and reach millions of people. And while we think about it as a one-way street, I want to try and claim that this is actually kind of a dialogue. And again, I also want to refer to how this image you can already kind of reflect on who this person is, even if it's a still image and you don't know what he's talking about. It's important to understand this, that the unique quality, I think, of YouTube is that it allows us, or invites consumers to be creative. So it gives them tools that are creative tools. It gives them a camera, so they become directors. It gives them texts, so they become journalists or screenwriters, etc. They wear a certain costume. They are becoming art directors with the backgrounds they use. And I want to share one of my favorite examples in the way that YouTube has affected music industry or the music direction industry, and that's the lip syncing videos that you probably know.
大家好，我们是美院的。
You are my fire, the one desire, believe when I say I want it that way. But we are two worlds apart.
I'll stop here, but you can check it out later. Well, But I want you to notice a bit how they use this tool of direction. I mean, they have certain costumes, they have a certain choreography, they have probably practiced this for quite some time, and they even notice the details in the background, like this guy that seems completely uninterested in what's going on, sitting in the back. But this is also a tool of communication, because this is not a spontaneous event. I mean, this is something that has been gradually developing, this kind of meme, this lip-syncing meme. And it has very different interpretations. Some of them are better than others because maybe they know how to use these tools. But they do have, sometimes we can track it or not, they do have an origin, and they do have a gradual development over time while we are learning the tools to become creative, become kind of amateur professionals. And this is about, I think, the way we start a conversation using these tools. We start a conversation about aesthetics, sometimes about politics, and sometimes about big industry. And this conversation is not only between those amateurs that play their songs on YouTube, but it's also between those amateurs and the industry back. So for example, two Israeli girls that did a nice lip-syncing video for the Pixies that got millions and millions of views have recently directed the new Pixies video. They were invited to direct them by the Pixies. So the origin of lip-syncing is actually very spontaneous. It's this guy. You probably know it. It's 2004, even before YouTube. And that's very spontaneous, just a bored guy with a camera. But some of these conversations are not only generated by, shut up. Some of these conversations are also generated by industry and then thrown back into YouTube. So this is a film called Be Kind, Rewind by Michel Gondry, Hollywood film. And the concept is two guys working in a video store. All the videos have been erased, so they make 20-minute versions of classic Hollywood films. This is Ghostbusters.
Sure it is. It's something strange.
Stay where you are. I'm on my way. Then I got slime.
That wasn't bad. What else y'all got?
I will shoot you, and I know robot karate.
Nothing from nothing, leave nothing.
These are not just simple remakes.
What's happening to her?
Okay, there's more. I really recommend this film. But this is starting as an industry kind of invitation to play with these ideas. And what is interesting, I think, is that it asks people not only to find the interpretations, let's say the creative interpretations in terms of content, but also in terms of money. I mean, because people don't have money. These are industries that are out of our reach, usually. We can't make these effects because we don't have the budget. So we find interpretations. In this case, they call it in the film Sweded films. This is films from Sweden. So they start as a Hollywood film and then roll back into YouTube. So this is Terminator 2, Judgment Day.
No. No. Run. Run away. Run away. Why? No! I know what I have to do.
Who are you people?
Show.
Okay, so if I kind of try to understand how it works, then I think it starts with a common original, so something we all know and can relate to, something that's kind of basic culture for us. So a song we all know, or a film we all know. Then we do a recontextualization of it. So we reappropriate it, and that's kind of a creative action because we try to figure out how we want to reinterpret it. Usually humorous, but not only. And then we have to find a low-tech, like an aesthetic action. We have to do an aesthetic action to figure out how we translate all these effects, all this kind of known scenes, known effects, and still keep it understandable for those who watch it. And that gives it a new quality and a new creativity in itself. And then, of course, the main thing is that YouTube is actually a distributor. It's a distributor of this film. And if it's distributed to enough people, they will reappropriate themselves, and we start this conversation again. And then maybe film number 50 will already be something that has its own values. So now back to my profession, and my curiosity is the fact that we invite people through these videos into places that used to be very, very intimate. We usually don't invite many people into our home, not to our living room, and definitely not to our bedroom. But suddenly, as you've seen in many examples here, suddenly these places are becoming public. They're becoming visual for millions of people. So we can also try and think about it as a tool to talk about this space, the interior, and not focus on the face in the camera, but talk about the background, which is, at least for me, interesting. As a tool for design, by the way, as a dialogue about design, not just as something to give you creativity about, but as something that I, as industry, can then learn from and use again. Now, this is also something that is out of reach, like other industries. So these design icons, some of you may know, some not, are completely out of reach. This is a chest of drawers by Theo Remy for Droog Design, cost 20,000 euros. A couch by a famous designer called Hella Jongerius cost 6,700 euros. Chair by the Campana brothers for 6,000 euros, not comfortable even. And let's wait a second. And then we are not only are we not we can't even hope to own those. Even if we do, we can't even imagine reappropriating them, painting them, or doing something to them because they cost so much. So they're holy. So I started to think about my interior again, and how can I maybe start this conversation and take this idea of low-tech interpretation into that. So first, what does my interior say about me? And I talked about this before a bit. What if I have an IKEA home? Or what if I have a background of me in the Alps somewhere in Switzerland with very high-end design furniture in the back? Or just kind of a very serious kind of background. And what does this background say about me, and how can I put my ideas into it? So this is my first attempt. It's very quick, but first I had to set the scene for this. So my first attempt was saying, okay, let's fake this depth where I can play with. Now, as I said, we all know, of course, that the Terminator 2 thing is a fake. It doesn't look like a real robot arm, but we accept it because we know the limits of our tools. So we can also accept this notion of designing our interior. Okay. But then when I tried a bit also to frame it to something that we can use, I started to think about this idea of making a stage. The stage is very easy. It's made out of foam board, but it sets a certain perspective, a certain depth, and in that limits I can play with. And once we all accept that we are talking a different language, a language that is this kind of low-tech discussion, we can start discussing what's in it. So whether I live in this kind of normal home or this very high-end design home. And then we start talking about how we make these products. But when we go down in scale and when we are suddenly kids again, we can go into the store and buy some plastiline, some clay, or some chips of wood, or print something out and fold it, then we can start playing with it. So this is MDF pieces, and I hand drawn the drawers there. You saw it before. And the favela chair is a piece of folded paper, and the couch is made out of foam. And this, you don't really see it, but there's a very famous design we can discuss if you like it or not later by a group of Swedish designers called Front, that is a real-size pig in black with a plate on top of its head, and that's a table. So here it's just a pig from a kid's toy store with a dime on top of his head, and that's the table. And through this reappropriation, we can start talking about design, and we can also offer these tools to others. How do we make the stage? What kind of products did I make? What kind of projects did you make? What kind of interpretations of products did you make? What kind of videos you made with it, either in this platform or in other platforms like YouTube and others. So for example, this is the spread. You can print it in your own printer and then make your own favela chair, and it functions as the background. So I just conclude with like my conclusion video, which is a kind of a kickoff to what I think it could be. I'll talk a bit over it, but I think it's quite understandable.
When you're growing up in a small town, when you're growing up in a small town, when you're growing up in a small town, you say, no one famous ever came from here. When you grow
So the first notion is that I'm not obliged to live in the house I live in. I mean, or in the inside my income, at least when I'm communicating over video. So my first action was to try and live in this kind of fancy house. But then the second question, I think, and that is still open for interpretation, is once you realize that you're not obliged to live in certain conditions, that you can also play with them and do whatever you like with them, whether it's destruction and whether it's fantastic or whether it's obeys the laws of physics or not. So you can destroy the favela chair, it's fine.
being odd in a small town. If they stare, let them stare in New York City. At this pink-eyed painting albino, how far can my fantasy go? I'm no dolly coming from Pittsburgh, no adorable lisping Capote, my hero. Oh, do you think I could meet him? I'd camp out at his front door. There's only one good thing about a small town. There's only one good use for a small town. There's only one good thing about a small town. You know that you want to get out. When you're growing up in a small town, you know you'll grow down in a small town. There's only one good use for a small town. You hate it, and you know you'll have to leave.
So I'll just conclude with saying that I think now we have new interiors to play with. And while this may seem fake, they can very easily, like in other fields, then roll back into industry and we can rethink our physical interior. So thank you.